Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Kim. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How about you?
Very good, thank you.
Good, good, good. Well, I want to welcome everybody to the Kim and Jerry podcast and really excited about today's podcast topic because this is our part three of the topic that we've been covering on non-performing notes. Before we get started, I just want to give a disclaimer that this is for education and information purposes only. We are not attorneys or financial advisors or CPA, but we're sharing and hopefully demystifying, which is the title of today's topic, uh, investing in non-performing notes. I think this is going to be a goodie. I think we have some show and tell to show you how some real life case studies that we've done with non-performing notes that hopefully people will be able to see why we invest in non-performing notes. Uh, we do a lot for our investors for performing notes, but our own investments as well as in the investment into the company, we do a lot of non-performing notes, and hopefully people will see why we do so as we move along. But I think the last two plus today's podcast has been very insightful. I hope that people have been able to grasp non-performing notes. We've been getting a lot of uh, inquiries on non-performing notes. Investing in them, and are they really worth investing, right? And
Hmm.
I think
Yep.
that's a big yes. uh, so I know you have a lot to share. I'm really excited. I'm going to let you have at it and
Oh,
make sure that we get the lesson at at hand across to our viewers.
all right. Sounds good. Sounds
Thank
good.
you, Mary. Go ahead.
Yep. All right. Before jumping into the non-performing, I'm going to start by talking about performing notes.
Okay.
Um, it's we invest in both, as you said. Performing notes are a steady, consistent, passive income. It's a lot of folks will say that's mailbox money
Yeah.
because people pay their mortgages, either the first of the month or the middle of the month, and it's fairly consistent. Um, and with performing notes, we look at them, and we have a grading system. And typically for our A grade notes, we're getting somewhere between 10 and 12%.
Mm-hmm.
B grades 13, C grades about 14%. Now that number is going to vary over time with supply and demand. Um, and when you're watching this video, it may be 10 years from now, and the numbers are
Who
significantly
knows
different.
what the numbers will be, right?
Yeah, but for today, that's roughly where we are. And like I said, it's steady, it's consistent, and it's passive.
Right.
That's one of the big things that's the difference between a performing note and a non-performing note. For the non-performing notes, we get a much better return than that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I do want to make sure that we emphasize that for our non-performing notes, that is not a passive investment. You're going to be involved actively in managing those assets, which is one
Right.
of the
Right.
reasons why with our community and our investors, we kind of make that divide. Whether it's someone that has loaned us money and we're buying notes for them or with them, or whether or not they're right here beside us working on a transaction. So for the non-performing notes, we need to manage the assets, and we manage the process, whether
Right.
that is modifying a loan, whether that is working out the payout, or ultimately whether that's going through some kind of a foreclosure process.
Right.
You're
Right.
very actively involved in every step of the life of that note, and making a decision about what do you want to do with that note in every step. So
Right. Right.
that's what we mean by active involvement. You're going to be talking to the lawyers. You're going to be talking to the asset man, the servicing companies. You're going to be talking to um,
So-
trustees and people like that. So
exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That it does involve you a little bit more, of course, a lot more with the versus the performing notes because You're
Mhm.
just waiting on mailbox money with the performing note.
Yeah.
But with the non-performing note, it does require your involvement with all the aspects that are involved, and especially if you have to get involved with the attorneys, right? The attorneys want you to be involved, and so you need to be able to answer their questions, give them the information that they're looking for, and be on point in knowing your own asset that you're investing in.
Yeah.
I like it personally, and and
Yeah.
I certainly like working with the attorneys, and so that's not an issue. But
Yeah.
I think for
Great.
me as an investor, I enjoy the active part of managing the asset.
Agree, agree. And, having said all of that, um, not to try to be a downer on it, because like you said, I like it. That's how I started in the business, and it is pretty lucrative. We talked earlier, or talked to you a little bit about the types of returns that you get on a performing note. On a non-performing note, you get substantially more more return. And before getting into those returns, let's talk a little bit about why to get a much bigger return. With a performing note, we're buying at 5, 10, 15, maybe 20% discount if it's a marginal note. With
Right,
a non-performing note, we're buying a substantially bigger discount.
much
We may be buying 50, 60% discounts on an individual asset. And what does that mean? That means that if the borrower owes 100,000, we're buying that note for 40,000, 50,000.
right,
So it's like in any other aspect of real estate, you make your money on the buy and you collect it on the sale.
right,
So with notes, we're doing the same thing.
right,
So when we
right,
say you go back and you go, well, you look at the returns that we're getting. The reason we're getting those returns, we bought that note at like I said, at the discount, but the borrower still owes the legal balance, which
right.
is substantially higher, and that's why you'll see you doubled your money, you tripled your money, or whatever. And as I go through case studies and things like that, that's what is really happening. It's not like I'm making money out of the sky and it's just falling down and raining down on me. It's actually we knew when we went in roughly what this note was going to be worth, what we're going to get as our return.
And to your point, when we went into when we invested in a particular note, right, a
Mhm.
non-performing note, the due diligence requires you to be able. You should
Yeah,
be doing this level of due diligence to pretty much know how this note is going to end up, right?
yes,
And and by nature, most non-performing notes, because it is a non-performing note, people have stopped paying, right? And
Mhm.
so you try very hard to work with the borrower, right, to help them get back on track with a loan modification, or they find a way to do some kind of refi, or get family and friends involved to help pay off whatever debt that they have. But nevertheless, those who just continue to ignore the debt that they have, then the steps that need to be taken, right? And we talk about it
Mhm.
all the time. Every note, performing or non-performing, only has three possible outcomes, right?
True.
And so, all
Yeah,
right, it's
that's
either
true.
going to be a paid as agreed, right, or paid off early, or they fail to pay, which requires action to be taken, like
Yeah,
moving into foreclosure. And
yeah,
so, but you should know this. It shouldn't be a surprise to you, because you've done the due diligence where you've come to know the property, you've come to know the borrower, right? The
yeah.
payment history, what they protect and what they don't protect, and maybe even some life dynamics that have taken in their life that cause certain circumstances to take place. But you pretty much know where the direction of a note is going to take when you make the investment. And
True,
so,
true.
and you work that note once you've made that investment in accordance to your due diligence.
Yeah. And
And
just one final point on that, and you touched on it, because you know the payment history for a non-performing note. One of the big things for us is knowing when did they make the last payment.
right,
That's how you determine how much that note is really worth,
right,
because all of that interest is accruing over time, and that is part of the value proposition that you're looking at. We don't, when we're buying notes, we don't we don't use that as part of our purchase price, but we do keep that in the back of our mind so that we have some a feel for what the upside is, what the upside return could be on a given note.
That's right.
So,
Because that's what you're investing in, right?
true,
And so
very true.
it
Yeah,
becomes all part of the whole.
yeah,
So it's again, I love this. It's strategy. It's like playing chess.
yeah.
I love it. It's and when things evolve in accordance to what I think it's going to evolve based on the due diligence, whether that be a loan modification or whatever, it's great to know that the instincts, right, and the experience align with what actually happens with that note, right? So
Agreed. Agreed.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Listen, I know you've got some case studies that you wanted to share with us. You want
Yeah.
to talk about that and
Yeah.
actually be able to show the benefits of. Let's see if I can get it up here. Sorry about that.
No worries.
And window. Here it is. Yeah. Okay, here we are. Can you see the
Yep.
presentation?
Yep.
And the first slide I have is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yes. All right. So, as we mentioned before, you make your money on the buy. And when we're looking at a note, we're trying to evaluate what's going on in the life of the borrower. In this particular note, we purchased this note for $29,000. We knew that the borrower hadn't paid in several years. And we also knew that the borrower had gone through some some financial issues, but also some family issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably impacting their ability to pay the mortgage. Um, I'll also say that just based on the response we got, they probably didn't know where to send the payment. You know,
Mm.
thinking back on what we talked about in one of the earlier videos, when you take out a loan nowadays, the loans are sold from one party to another party to another party, and people kind of lose track of where do I send my payments in. And I want to
Right.
say that's kind of what happened here. They went through some family life events and lost track of who owned the note and where they send their payments. So we got this note, and part of the process, that we're required to do legally is let the borrower know officially, we are your new lender. Here's where you make your payments. Here's how much you owe. Here's what the payment amounts are, all that kind of stuff. In this case, I was stunned. you know, we only owned the note for maybe 5-6 weeks, and I'm looking at my account at the servicing company, and I'm not quite understanding what I am seeing. And I see payment after payment after payment after payment. The borrower literally made 2 years of payments at one time.
Wow.
So by doing that, they basically paid off what we owed or what we paid for that note, and we have an infinite return. We have
Right.
zero investment in the note, and every month they're making a payment.
Yep.
So I'm loving that.
Yeah.
And getting it's we knew that it was a good note. You can see the house there. It's a nice house, very well maintained, nice
Okay.
landscaping. So you knew that there was pride of ownership. The borrower had been in that house for decades. So we
Okay.
knew when we bought the note, we were going to try to do whatever we could to make sure that borrower stayed in that house. And we were surprised. They just were looking for, who do I make the check out to?
Right. Right.
So while I said, investing in non-performing is an active investment, this one went from active for a very short period of time to very passive. It's just mailbox money at this point.
Right. Right. No, but this was a good news story, right?
Yes, it
So
was. Yes, it
and
was.
it worked out fine. So I'm going to move on to the next one. This is
Yeah.
Han, Kentucky. No, I think you got.
Yeah.
There we go.
This is one of my favorite deals. And
Okay.
again, I'll say everybody's experiences are going to be different based on
Hmm.
what you buy, when you buy it. Every note, every situation is different. But we bought this note on August the 29th, 2022. And during our due diligence, we send people out, we get pictures of the property, street views, all to make sure we know what the house looks like, what the property looks like. And you'll see here, it's a nice looking house. It's
Yes, it is.
out in the middle, and it's in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky, but it's a nice looking house. And I
Yeah.
know I said I didn't buy rural, but this was too good of a deal to pass up. So we bought the note, and as we were doing our diligence, we noticed that there was a for sale sign on the house.
Oh
Now I'm
boy.
holding my breath
Yeah.
that we don't close before we buy the note, because then the bank we bought this note from would get the proceeds.
Right.
And lo and behold, we got through closing, and I went on vacation. I was literally in South Africa. I get a phone call, and I left a message that I will not be answering the phone because it's an international call, and I can't. I'm not going to pay that bill. If you need to see me or need to talk to me, send me a text message, do an email. It's urgent email from somebody in Kentucky. I have no clue who you are.
Ah,
I typed back, what do you want? And they said, we have a closing on Friday. How much do you want? And, I sat down and had to run through the calculations. How late were they? What were the interest rates and all this other kind of stuff? And, told them how much we needed. That Friday, we got paid. So this was the shortest I've ever owned a note. In 5 weeks, we got a 462% return, and you can see the numbers. Bought the note for 13,000. We made and sold it for six and got paid off 60,000. So basically, my business class trip to Cape Town was paid for by this note.
yeah.
So
Very nice.
yeah, yeah. So like I said, my favorite, because and it also goes to show you that you can do this business anywhere. We were doing this. I'm actually closing a deal 13,000 miles away.
Right. Right.
So,
Right. No, no. I see it. All
yeah.
right. The next one is Ruston, Louisiana.
Western Louisiana. Another non-performing note. We bought this, and again, it's it's another rural place. Most people that are on this podcast will not know where Ruston is, but there is a group of folks that I'm hoping that are listening to this that will know exactly where Ruston is.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And they went to a school with tigers for their mascot. So Ruston is a town right next door to Grambling, Louisiana.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, another property that we saw. Um, there were some issues with the notes and issues with the paper, but overall, it was a good looking note, and a good looking property. It turns out that the family that owned this house had moved away, so the house is vacant. And that was a little bit of an issue. And we thought we were going to have some issues with that as we were working through the note. But because it was vacant, I knew that there may be less of an emotional attachment, and we might be able to do something with this particular note.
Right.
We
Right.
bought it, as you can see, for about 12,000, and our payoff ultimately wound up being about $43,000. Um, what happened was the borrower, we started trying to put a loan mod together on this, and it just didn't work. And ultimately, that fell through. They kind of ghosted me, so we didn't hear from them. So we just filed for foreclosure,
Mm.
and um, the house was worth substantially more than that payoff value. So we were about a month before the foreclosure, before the sheriff's sale. We started getting phone calls from the borrower. What can we do? What can we do? And literally at that point, because I've already pushed it into legal, we really did not want to pull back, because we've paid a lot of money for legal. And even though the borrower ultimately has to pay us back that money, it's come out of our pocket, and we want to get our money back from the lawyers. So we really couldn't cancel the foreclosure, and just said, no, you got to pay us off. 36 hours before the sheriff's sale. Borrower
Mhm.
calls me up again. Literally, I remember it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They're frantic. Is there anything that they can do? They found a friend that could pay it off for them. And, I've been through this with this borrower before. And I just said, well, call my lawyer and talk to them, and you can work it out with them. The next morning, I get this really cryptic email from the lawyer, which said, stop foreclosure. Had no idea
Wow.
what it meant. Called them up and they said, you just got wired every penny. So in that case, while the borrower, we thought they were having issues, they found a way to save their house, keep the house in the family, and keep that equity in their family. So I was really happy about that because I
Right.
knew that, it's kind of the family keeps their family legacy going. They keep that house for another generation. And, ultimately, like I said, it's worth substantially more than that payoff. So
Right.
I'm glad they got to keep it instead of us having to take over the property.
Another good news story.
Yeah, yeah. The fun part about non-performing notes is, in some cases, you do have some good news stories.
Right. And no two notes are the same, right? We talk about
That's
this all
true.
the time. No two notes are the same. Don't make any assumptions. You really have to work each note individually and know the dynamics of each property and what's going on.
True.
You can't assume it's
True.
going to fall out the same way every time.
That is true.
I think you have another property. Yes, Gastonia, North Carolina.
Yeah. Another, a small note. This was a second,
Hmm.
non-performing second that we picked up. Purchased it for about $8,000. Again, the borrower hadn't paid in a number of years, and they too were going through some family issues. I think there was a death in the family or something like that,
Hmm.
and they didn't have the funds to be able to pay, so they stopped paying.
Right,
Um, we talked to them, found out that situation, found out a little bit more about what was going on in their lives, and they basically said, "Hey, we want to sell the house and move on to another property," um, and we're good with that.
right,
And from my
right.
perspective, um, I would rather let the borrower do whatever they can to dispose of the property if they need to do that, as opposed to trying to do it through the legal system. And the reason is, the when we do a foreclosure, the borrower has to pay our legal fees.
Hmm.
So if you're going through a financial trauma, it doesn't seem right to have to pay your legal fees and my legal fees. So we'll just let it ride, let you go through. And in this case, they sold the property. We got a very nice return on our investment without really having to do anything dramatic to be able to get it. So they
Right,
sold the house, moved on to a better property, to another property, took their equity, and we got paid off. About a 300% return on investment.
right, right. No, this is good.
Yeah,
These are four excellent examples of, you know, some dynamics that we experience with, um, non-performing notes today, even, right? I know you have
yeah,
some here, but uh,
yeah,
this is kind of what you can anticipate, right? With
yeah. Well,
investing in
you
non-performing notes,
you mentioned it earlier. There are only three possible outcomes. If you look
right?
at each of these notes, they fall into the three possible outcomes. The first
Okay,
note, Pittsburgh, paying as agreed. So the outcome was they caught up and now they're paying every month. So paying as agreed. Other notes, two of those notes, um, the borrowers sold the houses. So
mm,
that's paying it off early. So paying before the term of the note actually occurs. The final one was they couldn't pay and we took it to foreclosure, and ultimately they settled with us so that it didn't go through the auction process, but still, that was what happens with the third option. They couldn't, failure to pay.
right. right.
So it
And
just so
they were
happened.
all nice looking houses too, right?
Yeah,
These were
yeah,
not dives. These were
no,
not, something that, you just take because it's a non-performing note. These are very nice properties, which they are most of the time, right?
yeah,
That
yeah. Well, part of our buy box, we didn't say this, but
oh yeah,
we were talking about it the other day. We buy pretty houses.
we got
We
pretty
buy notes on pretty houses, because my thinking is, if in worst case I have to take this house back, I don't want to get stuck with it.
right,
So
right,
I want a house that other people want just as much as the owners want it, so that we do what we do, which is financial and financial asset management as opposed to tangible asset management. I
right.
used to
Yeah,
do that. Well, actually, I still do that with the other part of the other business we have. But we're slowly trying to sell off all the tangible real estate and put more of our money into the note business.
right, right. But again, it just emphasizes the due diligence process of investing in non-performing notes, right? You have a buy box that you should use specifically as a guide. Um,
Yes,
it doesn't have to be so restrictive that you don't make any concessions, but it gives you a starting point to where you would invest and know what to do. And an exit strategy is part of your due diligence, understanding the asset that you're considering and investing in.
true,
So,
true.
yeah,
And with
and
all of these, we had a mental exit strategy,
right,
and it turns out none of our exit strategies were right, but we ultimately got the rewards that we thought we were going to get from those notes.
right, right, and that's what you have to think about. So it always a like you said a mental process,
Yeah,
how you manage that particular asset.
yeah,
Uh,
and you mentioned it just now. Making sure that you have flexibility in your buy box.
right,
Like I said, I don't particularly like to do rural, but there are some times when rural makes sense. Ruston, Louisiana, on the surface, is very rural, but it's a
right,
college town.
right,
Makes a big difference.
right. So
So you have to be able to kind of mentally work through all of that kind of stuff.
right, exactly. No, this is great, and as I speak to the audience, that we have a community that we actually walk through due diligence
Mhm.
process for anyone that wants to consider investing in non-performing notes. We help, our community be able to um, make wise choices in their own investments with non-performing notes. It's a great time because we're sitting around the table and we're going through and checking those boxes and actually evaluating the properties, the borrowers, right, and
Mhm.
and and the
Yep.
payment history, et cetera, et cetera. And it all comes together like a big puzzle. It's a fantastic time, and if you would like to join the community or work with us to buy non-performing notes, just give us a call. Um, Also, you can also go onto our website, which is www.firstshieldfinancial.com. And then, all of our contact information is in there, and you can provide your contact information. Real easy to get to. Schedule an opportunity to speak with either of us and talk about if you would like to also invest in non-performing notes. And hopefully, these three podcasts put together has helped, you know, take away some of the concerns and fear,
Mhm.
right, about non-performing notes.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed. Yeah, the primary purpose for going through and doing all of this was that we got a lot of feedback about non-performing, and
yeah,
wanted to try to dispel some of the misconceptions, give you
right,
a feel for what's really going on, how does it work, and again, make sure that you understand there are only three possible outcomes, and even whether it's performing or non-performing, it's the same three.
right.
So,
They too are collateralized, right? So
yes, yeah,
it makes for still a great investment. You just have to have a different mindset
sure.
in investing in non-performing notes. But this was great. We would appreciate any feedback and any follow up. And if you have more questions,
Mhm.
don't hesitate to get in contact with us. But thank you, Jerry. This was absolutely fabulous. I don't have anything more. Do you want to share anything more before we
Well,
disconnect?
if you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button down below,
Yeah.
and join our community, and also uh, stay connected with us to see the future podcasts that come out.
That's right. Yeah. And we have a community called The Shield. Connect with The
Yes.
Shield. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jerry. It's
All
been
right.
great.
Take care, Kim.
Yeah. All righty.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.